Hey guys, so in this quick lesson here, I'm going to be showing you in Design Space the key steps you need to do in order to set up your files correctly when you're working with Infusible Ink specifically. So we're going to be using our slice tool, and we're going to be using this file here with Infusible Ink, and it looks really boring right now because the Infusible Ink patterns are going to jazz it up once we get it cut out on the actual transfer sheets. But we need to make sure we set this up appropriately. Now with like heat transfer vinyl, you would just layer these. There wouldn't be anything too fancy you'd have to do. You would just cut these out and you would layer them, right? Well, with Infusible Ink, Cricut does not recommend that you layer Infusible Ink directly on top of each other because it could fade the inks because of the prolonged amount of heat you would have to apply to each additional layer. So they recommend doing what they call the slice and set technique. And that is basically just that each of these layers that overlap, for example, here are little characters over this blue circle, there's going to be, the t-shirt will make direct contact underneath. It won't actually be the circle making contact with these. It's going to be cut out of the circle, which is how we use our slice tool. So I just want to make sure you know how to set this up properly so you don't ruin your Infusible Ink project, because Lord knows that Infusible Ink is a little expensive and we don't want to make any oopsies. So here's what we're going to do. First things first, you need to, of course, upload this into Design Space. Just use your upload button there and upload the SVG. This one is free on my blog. And like I said, it looks boring now, but it won't once we get through the Infusible Ink project. So right now, when you upload him, you can bring him in, then ungroup everything. And I do leave the little characters ungrouped here just in case you want to use these for different projects or whatever. So the first thing you're going to need to do is to group these guys right here. So just hold your Shift key and select each one of the character pieces. And then actually you'll want to use your weld button. I'm sorry, I said group. You'll want to use the weld button in the layers panel because we want it to be one united path inside of Design Space. So go ahead and click your weld button there. The next step here is going to be to duplicate everything on your screen. I just say to do everything. You'll see that we don't actually use everything, but just duplicate everything on your screen for easy understanding. So let's duplicate that whole thing. Let's set it aside over here and then just group it in your layers panel and then hide it using that little eyeball in your layers panel, okay? So now I want you to select your little characters here and that blue circle that are overlapping. Sorry about that. Once we do that, you will see in our layers panel over here that the slice tool is now available to be used. And that's what we're going to be using to complete the technique that Cricut calls the slice and set. So I'm just going to click on that. And when I do, you will now be able to pull these pieces apart. You'll see this piece come off here first. You don't need that, so just delete it. Pull this guy off. You don't need that either, just delete it. And then pull the actual subtraction of the image off there as well and delete that. The only piece out of everything we just did there is this blue piece that you're going to need. That's the only piece you're going to need. But now what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to set the characters back into place. Now we have that nice negative space right there so that when we put our characters back over the top, that is what's going to make contact with the t-shirt, not the actual layers of ink underneath it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go over to that duplicated copy that I hid in my layers panel, and I'm going to unhide it and then ungroup it. And we don't need the circle and we don't need the words because we already have them still over here. And then just pull this little guy right back over the top here and set him right back where we sliced out the other ones. Now when we go to cut this out, we'll have our same two layers, still looks the same as before, but we're not going to be pressing brown Infusible Ink onto our patterned Infusible Ink that we're going to be using for this circle, and then it could create some really funky colors or make it fade faster or whatever. Cricut warns against that. So that's how you do the slice and set technique. You can do this with pretty much any file. I include a few different files with the free Lion King ones I have on my blog. Let's see here, do I have them in the panel? Yes, so I have this one, this one on the blog, just one of my favorite quotes by Scar. And I have this one that I'm making for my kids. I'm working on my roar. So like with this one, it doesn't overlap. So if you wanted the letters to somehow overlap or work them inside of little Simba there, then you could use that same slice and set technique. You could cut the letters out here if you're wanting it to overlap with Scar's face, if you like this SVG file. So you would use the same slice and set technique there. When I posted this in my group asking if y'all wanted me to do this, I let you vote for either Lion King or for Mickey and Minnie, and I am going to be doing the Lion King one in the actual video tutorial because that one won on the votes, but I did create some Mickey and Minnie SVG files for those of you who want to apply the same techniques but use the Mickey and Minnie files. So these are also available on my blog. If you are wanting the Mickey and Minnie files and you prefer those, you would perform the same slice and set technique. Let me just, for example, shake here. Let me just get this off here. Whoopsies. There we go. And my kiddos' names. My kids' names won't be in the files, of course. That was just something I put in there. So you would do the same thing here. We have Minnie. She's got a red bow on, so this is two-toned here. And you would just duplicate Minnie there. And then we would go ahead and click. We have to ungroup, sorry. We have to ungroup first. And then go ahead and click on just the bow and Minnie's actual like head, face, whatever you want to call it. And then go ahead and hit slice. And this, again, won't really look like anything actually happened, but you will see that the bow now pops out just like that. Coincidentally enough, for this design, you actually can just keep the bow layer that was on top there. We actually didn't need to duplicate. I didn't think about that. So for this particular design, it worked out to where we didn't need to actually duplicate. So we can just get rid of this extra copy over there. So that's just another example of how you use that slice and set technique. And then you could, of course, if you're going to keep the little mini fingers and face the same colors, you could actually just group these together or weld them or attach them, however you want to do it. I think I'm going to weld them. So now I just have this layer and this layer. Put that back. There we go. So, and then of course you could add text if you wanted to. So you could come over here to the text and type something out. You could curve your text around there if you wanted to. But I'm not going to go into all those steps because those are really additional tutorials. And if you're one of the people who is watching this inside of my course, then I go into that in more depth, which is for students only inside of my Cutting Edge Crafters course. So anyways, this is the front end work for our Infusible Ink project. So I just want to make sure you guys know exactly what to do for the slice and set technique if you're using these or any other type of files. And there's going to be a part 2 video where I actually show you how to assemble all of the Infusible Ink layers onto a t-shirt. So I will see you there.